I think it's safe to say many of us are familiar with stress and even the sources that can impact us the most. Well, today we're going to learn how to eat to beat stress. Hello everyone, my name is Christy Grayson and I am the nutritional health coach at South Aurora at Natural Grocers. A little bit about me, I have a bachelor's in biology and a master's in education with a passion to share nutrition education with as many as I can. It was through my own struggle with chronic stress and digestive issues that got me interested in nutrition and learning how best to support my body, especially during stressful times. Before we begin, this class is not intended to diagnose, treat, or mitigate any disease. Dietary supplements and foods can interact with prescription medications. If you are taking a prescription medication, please become informed about the possible interactions. As a family-owned company, we were built and still operate from our 5 founding principles listed below. Today, I'm going to highlight that we are committed to the health and welfare of our employees. 2 ways in which we are committed to our employees are providing monthly nutrition education and free one-on-one coaching sessions. Well, we all know that we don't like feeling stressed or stressed out. We know the feeling of a shaky voice as you begin a presentation, or the worry you can feel waiting to see if you passed a test, or the anxiety some feel thinking about money. Many of us are exposed to stress, and the question is, what's going on inside our body when we're stressed? Stress is our body's natural reaction to dangerous situations that may compromise our well-being. In the past, this was usually around survival situations. And we have a part of our brain called the hypothalamus that scans the environment for danger signals. When the danger signal or stress signal is perceived by the body, it must be adequately prepared to respond. The stressful situation of being chased by a lion, for instance, causes a zebra's brain to send signals to the adrenal glands, which are located on top of the kidney, and this in turn prepares the zebra's body for flight. Adrenaline is the acute stress hormone that increases heart rate, contracts blood vessels, and dilates airways to get ready to fight or take flight. Cortisol is our long-term stress hormone. Just as with most hormones in the body, some is necessary for life, but too much or too little can cause trouble. So after being chased by that lion, what does that zebra do? Well, the ideal thing to do is to rest and recover. Stress is not a problem when we have an opportunity to rest and recover. Zebras don't spend all their time being chased by lions, and if and when they do escape, they relax, they eat grass, they lay in the dirt. Some stress is healthy. Adrenaline and cortisol work together to help create new connections in the brain, which build new memories, improves mood, encourages creative thinking, and stimulates the brain to grow new connections within itself. In addition, cortisol has additional important roles in the body, like telling the liver to produce glucose, which is another word for sugar, has immunomodulatory action on immune cells, regulates fluid balance in the body, works with adrenaline to create memories, and even participates in the sleep cycle. This is an example of what a healthy cortisol level looks like as it ebbs and flows throughout our day. Cortisol levels are the lowest around midnight and start to rise between 2 to 3 a.m. They then reach a peak at around 8:30 a.m. and slowly decrease back to the lowest point around midnight again. At their peak, cortisol levels are about 8 times higher than they are at midnight. Most of our days probably have some mild stressors included within them. For example, our day does have occasional stressors that might influence our stress response. A still normal and healthy cortisol flow throughout the day would look something like this. This would be a healthy stress response, allowing for physiological adaptations, but without the negative consequences of stress. So you'll notice that we still have that peak at around 8:30, and our cortisol starts to drop as it approaches that 12 a.m. But we had a couple stressors in the day. Maybe we had a presentation or a meeting with the boss, caused our cortisol levels to go up a bit, but then drop back off as we rest and had a break from that. And then maybe some high intensity workout after work caused our cortisol to peak again mildly, and then started tapering off in a healthy way towards that midnight time. Unfortunately, many people's days are not so simple. So what do you think people do after a stressful day at work? Well, most people are sitting in traffic, worried about money, arguing with special loved ones, or maybe even worried about taxes. When you think about all of the chronic stressors that people are forced to deal with on a daily basis, you can imagine that their stress responses are totally out of whack. The stress response begins to look more like this red line than the normal peak and drop off. Chronic means that it's constantly happening. This constant stress and cortisol release is happening day in and day out. If you're constantly getting colds, suffering from irregular bowel movements, your heart rate is elevated, especially when you wake up in the morning, or are suffering from excessive and strange hunger or cravings, then these might be signals that healthy tension has tipped over into bad stress. So what can cause dysregulation of cortisol levels? Well, excessive exercise, low-fat diets, skipping meals, especially breakfast, sleep deprivation, anxiety, nutrient deficiencies, illness or physical trauma, bullying and stressful social situations, or even just constant daily stress. So this would be an example of where our diet can influence our blood sugar level, which could then, depending on what we're eating, influence the stress in our bodies. So by consuming what we call a standard American diet of refined sugars and grains, milk without fat, which ends up just being sugar water, orange juice from sugar from the orange, in addition to usually added sugar, we've just consumed more sugar than our body can handle. Then what happens is our blood sugar spikes, which stresses our body. Insulin is released to bring it back down. And because of the excess sugar, insulin has to shuttle what can be used for energy in cells, and then the rest gets stored in fat, which can increase mood swings and brain fog. The blood sugar drops, but unfortunately down below this normal blood sugar range, which then releases cortisol. There's that cortisol hormone again. Cortisol gets released to push that increase again of that blood sugar, and this roller coaster can just go on and on and on. And what normally happens when cortisol is released to raise our blood sugar, we have increased cravings, fatigue, and brain fog. And those cravings aren't for vegetables. They're usually for potato chips or caffeine or sweet stuff. So this roller coaster can happen all day long, and you see the kind of stress that this can put on the body. And while eating a healthy, balanced diet can help minimize the stress that we put on our bodies, chronic stress must be dealt with. Chronic stress causes a constant release of cortisol in the body. Many of the problems associated with stress are a result of this constantly elevated cortisol. You can eat the healthiest diet in the world, but if your cortisol levels are chronically elevated, you will never be healthy. When cortisol is chronically elevated, we start to develop problems associated with too much cortisol being present in the bloodstream. Early stages of chronic stress can include anything from like anxiety and insomnia, to cognitive decline, accumulation of visceral fat, hypertension, stunted growth, and immune suppression. Also, cortisol levels remain high as cortisol levels remain high for extended periods of time, the entire stress hormone response becomes dysregulated and the body is unable to properly respond to cortisol. Later stages of chronic stress can include fatigue, malaise, depression, brain cell atrophy, inflammation, autoimmunity and allergy, decreased fat use for fuel, osteoporosis, and low blood sugar. If cortisol does not come back down to healthy levels and remains chronically elevated, our health suffers dramatically, and it's many aspects of health. Our brains are very susceptible to the negative effects of chronic stress. The damage that chronic stress does to our brains can be seen when looking at the neuronal cells found in the brain. Dysregulated cortisol levels can affect can influence immune dysfunction, create an increase in belly fat and decrease in muscle mass, brain shrinkage and memory loss, infertility and hormone balance, and even behavior and attention problems. As you can see, the neuron on the left, which represents a healthy neuronal cell, has lots of branches and extensions. So you can see all of these branches and extensions. This is a healthy version of a neuronal cell or a brain cell. However, the neuron on the right, which is a representative of one that is under stress, has shrunk and it's atrophied. The damage to the brain can lead to even more inability to cope with stress and more dysregulation of our stress response, which then can lead to memory problems, cognitive dysfunction, inability to solve problems, and attention and focus disorders. And it's not just an issue for adults. Children can also suffer from chronic stress. Stress has been shown to be a major factor in the development of ADD and ADHD in children. ADD and ADHD are associated with changes to prefrontal cortex cells and changes in neurotransmitter release. So these are the negative consequences of stress. And none of us want to lose our memory, lessen our muscle mass, decrease our ability to learn, or have concentration or behavioral problems. But we have stress. So what is it that we can do? Well, we could approach the problems as individually. We could try to identify ways to support a healthy immune system, to support healthy weight maintenance goals, also by adding in diet and exercise. We could find ways to support healthy brain and support ways to support hormone balance. Or we could combat these problems at the core, and the core is stress. So we could just get rid of all the stresses in our life. Maybe be able to approach an area like this, very serene, very lovely. However, that's not usually very realistic for all of us, and that might be easier said than done. So what can we do? First step, don't skip meals. Eat foods that promote balanced blood sugar. Consume functional foods that contain ingredients that help the brain deal with stress more appropriately. When we're stressed, we need great nutrition because our body will utilize those nutrients much more quickly. So as tough as it can be to replace the chips and chocolate for protein, fats, and vegetables. So some feel-good foods that are really excellent to make sure that we're adding into our diets are going to be anything from fermented foods, healthy fats, adequate protein, and foods that support healthy blood sugar levels. We want to be sure to eat regularly to avoid our blood sugar swings and cortisol spikes. Fermented foods that contain probiotic bacteria can help alleviate stress. Healthy fats help to stabilize blood sugar and modulate inflammation. Quality animal proteins provide good fat, which the brain requires saturated fats and cholesterol for its structure and function. And other foods that are really helpful, things like healthy fats of organic butter, cheese, cream, olive oil, olives, avocado, coconut oil, nuts and seeds. Almonds are a good source of magnesium, which can help support a calm mood. Adequate protein is essential for reducing stress responses, and too little protein can cause protein energy malnutrition, which causes massive amounts of cortisol to be released into the bloodstream. When blood sugar spikes, we have the hormone insulin produced to bring blood sugar levels back down. But if that happens too fast, blood sugar becomes low, and then we need a cortisol spike to bring it back up, as seen in that blood sugar roller coaster that I previously showed you. So right now, what I'm going to do is I am going to turn on my camera. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you some examples of some of these things. Now, I don't have any refrigerated foods in here, and this is called sauerkraut, fermented cabbage, if you will. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with it. This is an example from the shelf. However, if you want those live probiotics, you're going to want to get the sauerkraut from the fridge, and you're going to want to have the label that says live probiotics included. But sauerkraut can be a really great fermented food. There are things like low sugar yogurt options, kefir, kombucha. A good healthy fat, especially for the brain, would be coconut oil. Coconut oil has what we call medium chain triglycerides in it, and those are processed differently in the body, which means they go straight to the liver to be processed for energy. And they're also a really healthy fat to support our brain. And some people love or hate these, but sardines can be an excellent quality source of protein. Want to make sure that they're wild caught, that they have a lot of vitamins and nutrients and minerals in them that can be really, really beneficial for us. Really great to get them with olive oil, have a healthy fat, toss it on a bed of greens, and you have a meal. All right, so what you see right here is what we call our healthy meal wheel. And you'll notice that on our plate, we want to see half of our plate filled with vegetables, organic, ideally organic vegetables, both breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The organic vegetables help us to reduce our exposure to pesticides and chemicals. Then we want about a palm size of protein, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Some really good healthy fats like coconut oil, olive oil, avocado oil, avocados for every single meal. And then these two sections are based on individuals as to what their health goals are, and depending on their metabolism and their activity level, we'll have a little bit of fruit and maybe have a need for some additional carbs. Supplements that can support during stressful times, we have ashwagandha, B-complex, magnesium, L-theanine, and phosphatidylserine. These are just a few examples. And for our purposes today, I brought a couple in. Here is some ashwagandha, and we have some magnesium. So we have some options there. And our ashwagandha is an adaptogenic herb that can help protect the brain from stress. And magnesium is a mineral that is really important that many of us don't get enough of. It's a calming mineral. You can get it, some of it through your diet, but many times because of the soils today, we do not get enough of that mineral. So thank you so much for joining me to learn more about stress-fighting foods. I hope that you'll join me again on February 20th for Immune Support 101. Again, my name is Christy Grayson, and I am the Nutritional Health Coach at the South Aurora Natural Grocers on Tower and Hamden. In addition to this free class, I offer free one-on-one coaching sessions and in-store resources that you can even find recipe demos and more nutrition presentations on our website at naturalgrocers.com. So stop on by to make an appointment or to get more resources to support your health goals. Till next time, bye-bye.